All right. Well, we're at 12 o'clock. So as folks kind of trickle in, I think we're just going to jump in and get started. So today is an open Q&A day. So if you have any kind of questions or issues that you're looking for help on, any topic is fair game. So we'll open it up. Does anybody have a question or topic that they would like to go through?
I got one.
Sure. What do you got, Cindy?
Is there a way to figure out where a screen flow has been set up to?
Oh, interesting. So you want to see like where it's being used somewhere?
Yes, because I'm basically going through another organization that's not mine, trying to understand it. And there's quite a few screen flows, but I can't figure out what triggers them, how it gets started on any of that kind of stuff.
Well, let's take a look here. So the short answer is I have no idea. But if it was going to be a thing, it's usually pretty common, in Salesforce where you might find that. So the first place I would probably look here, and I'm sure you've already done this, is to go to the flow screen. And for example, if I had a screen flow like this guy, which I want to speak about in a minute here, but if we had this, I'm going to go to View Details and Versions. Now, if Salesforce was consistent, what I would expect to see is a button here that says, where's this used? But as you can see, that is not here.
No, that would be nice though.
Yeah. So how else can you figure out where this might have been used? That's a good question. Let's open it up. Does anybody have any idea how to answer that? So where in Salesforce is this flow being used right now? The screen-based flow?
Especially when people don't write descriptions.
Yeah. I mean, one really, really ugly way to do it, if we don't have that ability to say, where's it being used, you could use in VS Code. Are you familiar with VS Code?
No.
Okay, so VS Code is kind of like the standard development IDE for Salesforce development right now, but it's got a lot of other really great tools, even for admins that are doing work, right? So what you could do, and all right, let me, I'm gonna stop my share for a second. I'm gonna open up my VS Code and I'll see if we can fumble through this. But basically what I'm getting at is you can go into VS Code, connect to the org that you're working in. There's a Cloud Explorer button that you can click on and basically click the Lightning pages and download all of your Lightning pages into VS Code. And then it's just as simple as doing a Control F for like using the search functionality and just looking for the API name of your flow. So basically anywhere that screen flow is referenced, you'll be able to see what page that's being referenced in. So that's the ugly way of doing it. But let me just see if I can demonstrate that real quick.
Okay.
Let's see if I go to, I don't know if I have a Salesforce org that would be in a good position to do this. Let's see. If this works right away, if I can actually get into this org, which may have expired, we'll go ahead and do this. And if it's not, then maybe I can schedule a time one-on-one with you and we can walk through it, or I'll show you how to get it set up. But this will definitely get you the answer you need, but it might take a little bit of, headaches to get there. Okay, so let me share my screen. All right, so this is VS Code. All right, so this is where you can write code. You can, use SOQL queries. You can connect to orgs and do different things. It's pretty powerful. That said, I just opened this, so we have to wait a second or 20. I'm not sure how long it takes, but eventually this will actually connect all my different Scratch orgs and everything else, and you'll see it go here. So if we just give this a second, let's see if this will let me connect, and then I'll show you this. Literally any second now. That should.
So is this a thing you can download or?
Yeah, VS Code. It's if you even go on Trailhead, they have trails that actually walk you through how to install VS Code and even get it set up for use within Salesforce.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why this is taking long. I open this probably 15 times a day, and it's like immediate. But of course, when I have 30 people watching me,
yes,
it's going to
you have an audience. Someone else I work with, she says anytime she shares a screen, it's always slower.
Okay, so now of course it's going through here. So yeah, let me see if I can open this up and just show you very quickly how this might work. So, okay, screen 2. All right, so here is a way I can connect to different Salesforce orgs. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm actually going to connect to my production Salesforce org. And I got to get this controls out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. But if I connect to my Dev Hub, which is like my standard production Salesforce environment, what you'll see is over on the left here, assuming nothing breaks because we're live, right? We should see a little cloud icon show up over here. Any second now. Again, it's connecting.
Right.
So if we give it a second or two. Okay, this is kind of ridiculous, actually, because I mean, this seriously is like instantaneous. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we're connected. And you see we got that little org browser icon over on the left, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I click on this, you'll get a full list of all the metadata in your org.
Okay.
Apex classes, triggers, flows, page layouts, individual fields, objects, everything is going to be in this giant list. So what you might do is after you wait 20 minutes for it to render and actually display the list, you can select the lightning pages, download them. They'll actually show up in your little folder, and then you can use that search icon to just look for the API name of your flow. So again, it's a little bit, well, there's several ridiculous things here. The fact you have to pull metadata out of Salesforce just to search where a flow is used. That's the first ridiculous thing. The second ridiculous thing is the fact that I have no idea why this isn't even rendering the list of things in my org. So clearly there's like a network thing or something going on with my VS Code right now. But I think that would be a place I might start if you had to go that route. Okay. Anybody else have a thought on that as far as where you might find where a screen flow is being used?
Could you use the new Flow Trigger Explorer? Would you be able to use that to see where that screen flow is being used on an object?
My understanding is that is for record triggered flows, but it wouldn't actually show screen flows. Now, if I'm mistaken there, I could be mistaken, but I believe that's just for record triggered flows.
Copy.
Yeah. All right. So Sandy, I might suggest starting there. That's again, you know how they say like you're holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I work a lot in VS Code, so there might be a little bit of that going on there, and there might be a more convenient tool to do that, but I know that would work. All right.
Thank you.
All right, sure. So one thing I actually did want to share before we open it back up to questions. A few weeks ago, we had somebody join to talk to us about the importance of discovery, right? And actually ran into an issue this week that I thought would be relevant for this group to kind of look at. So we had a customer that was looking for a way to take data from my application and actually make like a nice little pretty summary table, almost like a summary report. They want to be able to display this right on the page layout, right? So this is what, I crack my knuckles, I sit down, we're like, all right, easy to do this. We'll create a very quick Lightning web component that can get the summary data, create a summary row, make nice headers, perfect, right? Well, the problem is I didn't do any discovery, and I didn't realize that they had a professional edition org that doesn't allow you to write code. So we basically built this component, excuse me, and we weren't able to deploy it. So that was kind of a bungle. So I said, okay, all right, they can use flows though. They can do screen-based flows. So I very quickly, well over the hours that we quoted them to do this work at this point, I put together a flow, which is slightly more ugly, but gets the job done, right? So you can see it's the same data, same columns, does all the same aggregations, just in a weird HTML, table, can't figure out how to remove the padding type format, right? So that was all great. So then we deploy it to their org, and some of these things I'm like, well, I don't know why it's not displaying currency, so let me just hard code the $ in there, and that'll work fine, right? Well, I deployed to their org, only to realize that not only are they professional edition, but they are a multi-currency org using euros, British pounds, and US dollars. So again, I had to take a complete step back and in Flow, figure out how to take all this data, convert it to the appropriate currency rate, and then display, instead of the $ or pounds or euros, actually display the USD or EUR and all that kind of stuff. So not to get into the details of the actual solution itself, but I just want to point out the importance of however you do it, going through that discovery process to make sure that you're not going to end up burning yourself and burning hours as you're delivering work for clients. So what we've done, and clearly multi-currency and what edition of Salesforce wasn't on this list, but we just have a Trello board that we use now as a template that before we do services for any customer, we go through a series of sanity checks, like, is it more than this number of hours of scope? Does it require custom development? Is there integration work? Does the functionality that we're looking to deliver work with their addition of Salesforce? Is it a multi-currency org if we're dealing with amounts? And basically just make a giant checklist. And anytime we do work now, we just go very quickly through, scan through, and just mark everything off so that, we don't get burned again on the same thing. No guarantee that we're not going to get burned on something else, but this was just a nice way that, anytime we have a lesson learned, we actually write it down so that we don't, run into that same issue again in the future. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. There was an issue that we ran into this week that was 100% my fault for not even looking at the org before sitting down to write a solution. So yeah, any questions on that, or otherwise we'll open it up to any other questions.
Can we see it, the flow?
Sure. Yeah, it's I make no guarantees. Safe harbor. It's ugly, and let's see. Yeah, so and that was the other thing that we had to deal with too. We built this out in a dev environment, and then we had to deploy it into their org, and we ran into some issues with packaging and object API names that we matched in our org versus their org. So it was a very big headache. But let me just show you what it looks like here as far as that example. So creating the table in Flow, we didn't leverage any of I know there's a lot of tools that are out there like unofficial SF and things like that to display like table data from a flow, but they couldn't leverage that and they didn't want to spend any kind of money. So essentially what this does is it gets the data that we need. This is essentially the part where we're just getting the records that we need. And then for each one of the records that we found, we added to a list, just a collection of, in our case, an object called resource assignments. So that's like the raw data just to get records, essentially is what that is. And then in the end, this is where the magic part happens, right? So we have a text-based variable that we're going to be building an HTML table in, right? So for example, if I look at this part here, this assignment table is going to be the massive giant table, but we're just adding things to it one at a time. So the first thing we add is the table start and the header, and they're just variables we have in our flow. So if you look over here in table start, and this is where it gets real ugly, right? So like this is just like an HTML table tag, right? And then if I look in the header row, this is my header with all the HTML that just is like the column headers. And then in Flow, once we have the table header and we have like the basic table, started, we loop through every one of the records that we have, and we basically add them all to the flow. So we just add them each column one at a time to the flow, to that massive text field, which is going to hold our HTML table. And then after we do all that, we just have the ending, so the closing tag for the table, and then we just display it on a screen. Just put that variable right on a display text. So very ugly, very clunky, but if you can't use Lightning Web Components and they don't want to spend money and you have nothing left, sometimes that works, right? So just a simple HTML table to display data. So
did you get those parameters for the HTML table? Did you pull those from somewhere? Did you write those yourself, or?
Yeah, just writing it myself. So basically, some of this I could do from memory, but basically if you just Google like HTML table and they give you like the example of what a table looks like, there's a starting table tag and an ending table tag. And then for each row, it's like a starting row tag and an ending row tag. And then for each column in that row, there's a starting column tag and an ending column tag. So it's basically just a matter of making sure you get everything added in the right order, but in the end, it's just one big text. And I wish there's a way for me to actually show you what the final text looks like without it actually displaying HTML, but I don't know if there's a way to do that. But, in the end, it would just look like, here, if I just do a very quick HTML table example, it might look something like that text field, that assignment table might look like this. Like if we actually looked at the text of that, once I go through all the looping and everything else, this is what it looks like. That's what we display in the display text on the actual screen. And Salesforce Flow is smart enough to see its HTML tags, so it interprets it as actual HTML. So very ugly, but it works in a pinch.
Bill, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm newbie to this environment, but I'm trying to understand the context. Did you just go through all that because that's the way or the only way to build an HTML table? You have to do all those steps just to produce
Well,
HTML, or are there other ways to do that where I can make a call, bring it back, say like in an object, and then just print out the HTML table?
yeah, there's definitely ways that are more convenient. Like I said, there's a website that's out there called, I think it's Unofficial SF, where basically all these common use cases that folks have, where they just need to display a table. To your point, I just want to display a table to get the data and put it on a table. It sounds so simple in the year 2022 that you would just think that that's out of the box, right? So what these folks do is anytime these common use cases come up, they'll build them, and then it's just a matter of installing it in your org, and then you can use it in your flow. So it's just like it would drag an element onto your flow, add the data to it, and it's good to go. The problem in this case was that with their addition of Salesforce, and they're a little bit hesitant to add this kind of stuff, from the App Exchange or unofficial, areas. They just wanted to have something very quick, very simple that was unique to them, that's in their org. That's why I went through the effort of building it out as a flow with like an HTML table. But if I had to do this for myself, I probably wouldn't spend all that time. I would have just grabbed something from an Unofficial SF and installed it and just used that. Now, the other thing that we could have done, if I, and this is something new that came out in this previous release, which is actually kind of slick. If we look at this table, if all I wanted to do was display just this table minus the total row, it's really easy to do that now with this latest summer 22 release. So for example, if I go to edit page, we're all familiar with or most of us should be familiar with like the related lists that you would add onto a Lightning page, right? So in the old way of doing things, you would come down here and you would grab a related list single, you drop that onto your Lightning page, and then based on your page layout settings, that's going to determine what fields are actually displayed, when you display that list. The really cool thing now is that they have this dynamic related list, which we could drop onto the page. And when we use this, we can actually specify what specific object we want, and then we can customize the actual fields that get displayed in that related list wherever you want to display it. So you might have one set of fields on this page. I could have another tab down here that displays a different set of fields. It gives you full flexibility for how you want to design this. So for example, in my use case, I might get rid of this. We have the resource related record roll rate, get rid of that. And this, if I can get out of that weird thing. There we go. And there you go. There's my table. So I can go that route, and we could have displayed that, but they really wanted to have those totals at the bottom. So currently you can't do that with this dynamic related lists functionality, but just to display a table of data, this might get you 90% of the way there. It's just a weird edge cases like, I need to have a total row, or I need to have a total column that is multi-currency that converts it into the corporate currency, when all these could be different currencies. So different edge cases might require you to do a little bit more customization.
I have a question, Bill.
Sure.
So for the table with the totals, I think I would have maybe tried to use a report to have done that.
Yeah, that would be good. Now, the only issue that we've run into in the past is how do you get that report onto a page layout, though, or onto the detail page of a single record, and then filter down to that specific record? We could do it with charts, but I'm not familiar that we could do that with reports.
I think I've embedded charts maybe, or tables, but maybe that was Einstein Analytics now. I can't remember now.
Yeah, that's another thing. Now, if they had, I don't know what Einstein Analytics goes for these days, but they have a few extra bucks laying around, that would be a perfect solution. Absolutely with Einstein Analytics. But I think with the native, just basic Salesforce reporting, I think the best that we could do would be an inline report chart, but they really wanted that table of data.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah. Now, again, if there is a solution if we could do reports, just like we do report charts, where you can just embed the report onto the layout and then filter it down to the record ID of what you're looking at, that would be the best solution. It's just that I don't think that's there right now. All right, cool. Well, again, I'll open it back up. Any other questions or anything that anyone would like to walk through? besides my blunder this week.
I actually
Any,
have I actually just have this is more to like the collective as a question. So currently just trying to get more exposure to the new additions to Flow that are coming out, and also just more ways to like build more complex flows just to get better at them. Wondering if anybody has any resources for those, because after like the app builder cert gives you a lot of knowledge, and I have built flows in my time, but I'm just looking to expand and become more advanced. So I was just wondering if anybody has any resources that they would recommend.
Some recent ones that were passed along to me were Automation Champion. Okay, so you do that one already, Cody, or you've visited that one?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time on that site.
Okay. So what's your level of flows then at this point?
I'd say I'd say intermediate is probably my level right now.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
well, I'm just curious what resources you're already using that you like.
Automation Champion, and then I'm gonna butcher her name. I'm sorry, but the Jenny Lee blog that used to be up. She has a lot of great resources as far as how to use flows, but a lot of it is a little out of date now with the additions to Flow that have been added. So I'm Jen, thank you. Yeah.
But that's because she works at Salesforce now.
That's very true. Yes. And when I read that, I was like, oh, that's why this site isn't being updated. That makes sense. So just seeing if there's any other things that maybe I can use just to continue to grow my knowledge with Flow. I see a lot of people are posting. So thank you. I appreciate that.
So Cody, one other thing, this one might be a little obvious, but I think just the Salesforce release notes for the release itself, I find that's kind of nice just to read through them as well, just to see what's available. And then for me, besides going through a lot of great resources that folks have posted here, and that as we were talking, I was trying to post, but one of the best ways for me anyway to learn is the release notes plus a dev environment where I can just open up the Flow and actually just start dorking around with the new features and functionality. Sometimes I find like very basic use cases of just like building stuff on my own sticks a little bit better than reading a very complex, giant flow that somebody is trying to walk through with a complex use case. But a combination of all those things, I think that's probably the best of all the worlds. Any other thoughts? Yeah, go ahead, Cody. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think my my Achilles heel is anything with currency or money. I'm always scared about a flow with that, because I'm not sure. I'm still always confused about how to aggregate those amounts. I've done it before with a loop, like a single, like a loop, and then a decision within that loop that actually shows which path it went through. But again, still always gun shy about currency flows.
Yeah, the biggest thing with this flow that I ran into this issue this week was exactly that, the multi-currency thing. So basically, whenever you're dealing with any kind of currency fields, there's a formula function that we had to leverage called currency rate. So we had a formula field that would take whatever the amount is times the currency rate. And what that does is takes whatever currency you pass into it for that record, and then gives you the conversion rate to the corporate default currency, which thankfully that's the currency that they wanted to display in this table, because if it had to be something other than that, I'm honestly not really sure how you would do it with Flow. But to get it to the default corporate currency, it was easy enough just to use that function that's available. But yeah, multi-currency, it's definitely a headache. That's definitely one of those advanced, strangely nuanced topics in Salesforce.
I can only imagine, like, if you had multiple currency, you would have to have like a table that would like look up, like a VLOOKUP or something, to this table that had all the different conversion rates, and like somehow have a way to know which currency they're trying to convert it to, if all of
Yep.
those needed different currencies or something. You know,
Yeah,
I
so-
don't know how you build that.
Yeah, that is definitely something that if you're ever interested, I could share. So in our product, we actually have to deal with where an opportunity has one currency, the related assignments could have one or more different currencies, and then under that, the individual time records and where they actually keep track of hours and dollars, each of those records could have different currencies. And then we need to be able to take all that and either roll it up, through a custom roll-up field onto the opportunity, or display it in a table with whatever currency is selected on the opportunity. So when you're dealing with that Flow, that would just be a non-starter for me. But Apex, they have all the functions and things available that, you can actually query the currency table and you can figure out all the conversion rates and you kind of do it. So once you have that data, I think it's relatively easy. But in Flow, I don't think there's a great way to get to that data, at least not that I'm aware of. So,
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
yeah, I'll be honest, multi-currency makes me a little sad when I think about it. So maybe we can move on to a different topic.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring it down. I'm sorry.
Get a little sad with thinking about it,
All right.
Yeah, no. But yeah, if anybody's ever interested to see that in Apex, I'm happy to share that. And I kind of sanitize our code a little bit, and I can walk everybody through that. But definitely a headache. That was definitely a dark time in my life. So, all right. Any other questions or anything else that folks would like to walk through?
Based on last week's, some comments that were made last week about formulas and trying to debug formulas, and we're talking about the enhanced formula editor and so forth. I got to thinking about that, and I end up taking a lot of times, I hate the formula editors that Salesforce has. So I very commonly will take the resources and then pull them out and plug them into Notepad++. Because I like that format a lot. But I got to looking at it and realizing that there are some features in Notepad++ that allow you to highlight things and so forth, and they have different languages that are predefined, and you can, once you select those, and it can be based on the file extension type, but you can also apply it manually. So I got into that, and because you can do user-defined ones. And so I give my hand at, hang on, I was going to see if I could share. I have the ability to share. It's probably right in front of my face. Share screen, the big green one in front of you, Steve. Okay. Hang on. Oh, come on, where are you?
Now, for those that are not aware, Notepad++ is not like just a really cool version of the standard Windows Notepad add. It's like an actual, more or less like a developer IDE, or it's got tooling in there to actually help you with development.
Yeah. So can you guys can see my screen now, right?
Yep.
Okay, so this is something that I copied out and pasted in, and this is okay. Like I said, it's got some tabbing features and so forth that makes it nice and handy. But now, because I've done the user-defined language, I can apply this language to it, and now it goes in and highlights all the keywords in there. It also highlights strings. Yeah, and unfortunately, it doesn't do as much as I'd like it to do, because I would love it to be more like IntelliSense, where it auto completes brackets and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
Like I said, it just does spot the keywords, and that's great. Because one of the things that always gets me is in formulas is when if I want to say this or that, I'll put an or in the middle of it and think that's going to work, but that's actually a function. It's not an operator in Salesforce. So, and it doesn't tell me that until I try and save it. And then, yeah, so But at least this way, if I try and plug it in there, it does highlight it in yellow, which tells me it probably should be a function. And so, but yeah, it's not really that hard to do. There is some good documentation out there about how to do it. If anybody wants the language file for this, I'd be happy to share it. Just let me know and I can send that out. It's just a very simple XML file to drop in. And I find this very
interested.
Yeah, just
Learn
drop your
something
information.
new every day.
Yeah, just drop your email or something in the chat, and because I always save the chats from these.
So,
right.
Steve, can you do me a favor? If you left arrow over one space, like just hit left one time on your keyboard, just to go left one spot over. Just to okay. Can you do me a favor, just to kind of show another option you might have here? If you can copy this text that you have here for this formula, would you be okay sharing that in the chat, just so I can kind of show you one other thing?
Sure.
So.
Stop sharing here.
Yeah. Yeah, this is something I use a lot. And again, I know there's probably better tools to do this, but holding the hammer again, I'll show you one thing that I found pretty nice. So the biggest thing for me when I'm writing these kind of complex formulas is parentheses. So trying to find out like what are the matching parentheses and what's the closing tag, what's the next opening one. So the one thing I like about VS Code is that when you save this, if I just save it, let me just see if I can do this here. So let's just save this as test. I'm just going to save it as a JS file. Let's see. Okay, so basically when you have your parentheses, you can actually make this so, and of course I didn't save it as the JS like I wanted to. Let's rename this. Test.js. This is where I was getting at. So when you actually have your parentheses, it'll actually highlight the closing one and then your opening one.
Yep.
So if you're like kind of nested in here and you're trying to figure out which parenthesis goes with which, that's something I find pretty handy. That being said, like I said, I think that there's a Chrome extension that folks have mentioned in the past that'll actually do that for you, like right in the formula editor in Salesforce. But I don't have that. Yeah, Jen, raise your hand.
Yep. So a couple of things, you're right. If you go search the Chrome store, there are a couple of Chrome extensions that are called Salesforce Formula Editor. They are older. So Steve, I would say for your solution, you might consider getting it added as a Chrome extension. Yours looks newer and more modern. And that would be a nice way to distribute what you've got to other people, or else some sort of a public GitHub project that people could use. The other thing I'm throwing into the chat, Cheryl Feldman, who now works for Salesforce, wrote a really cool blog in 2014 about PEMDAS. And it's the whole, parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract. So it helps when you're writing formulas to think about the mathematical order of execution.
No, that's great. And for those who aren't aware, we had Cheryl actually as a speaker a few months ago. So if you haven't seen that recording, that's definitely worthwhile. Like Jen said, she's working for Salesforce now. I believe she's the PM of everything. I don't know, like the admin side or
Profiles,
permissions,
sets,
security. But that was a great one to catch up. And now I realize why I don't have the Chrome extension. And that's because every 6 months or so, I try to switch my browser. So right now I'm on Firefox. I have to go through Edge next, and then I'll switch back to Chrome. But I try to do that just from an application development perspective. Sometimes I get so focused on making it look perfectly beautiful in Chrome that when you look at it in Firefox, you look at it in Edge, you're like, oh my God, it doesn't line up right or something. So I try to make it a point to switch my browsers every once in a while, just to, work with it from our users' perspective, just to make sure we're not missing anything obvious as we work with our app, like in detail versus just a little bit of smoke testing that we would typically do in a release. So, yeah. All right. No, that's great, Steve. Thank you for sharing that. And if you could share the details, like you said, if you want to try to get a GitHub repo or, Chrome extension, that'd be pretty slick too.
Yeah, and I would just say that the parentheses, Notepad++ does that automatically. I was trying to get it to do it in different colors with the language, but it doesn't offer that right now. But
Yeah.
Overall, it works pretty well.
Can I ask you a somewhat personal question?
Sure.
Why Notepad++ versus VS Code? Is it just kind of something you've used for a while, or better features, simpler?
Probably just because I'm more used to it and stuff. I sort of keep Notepad++ available for a lot of different things. It's sort of like a junk place to paste stuff in, to manipulate and then paste it back someplace else.
Yeah.
VS Code works just as well. But yep, I'm not as used to VS Code, so that's probably the.
Yeah, I've been kind of on a journey. I think I started with Notepad++. I went to Eclipse while that was kind of the standard Salesforce, environment. And then eventually I went to VS Code, since that seems to be the kind of standard now. But the Notepad++, one thing that I think that beats all of them on is just its simplicity and utility. So always good to keep in the back pocket.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions? We'll open it back up. Anything else that anyone would like to walk through?
Going back to the flows with the multi-currency, I believe I had an issue. This was like 5 years ago where I wanted to display a certain value and it always displayed a $sign. Do you guys have a solution to display like the other currency symbols in flow? I believe what I did was I actually stored it as a variable or something, or as in a formula variable to present the currency.
Yeah, there might be a way around this for us, but what I found within Flow, I don't think that there's a great way to get to the specific like $sign or euro sign or whatever other currency symbols that are out there. So my approach, and it's kind of similar to what you might see in like Salesforce reporting in a lot of places or in the UI, is just to use the currency ISO code. So instead of putting like $sign and then the number, I would put the number and then a space and then whatever that currency ISO is, like USD or EUR or whatever it is. I'm sure that, if you have a finite set of currencies that you're working with, you could very easily turn that into a formula field, which is basically like a case statement that says, based on the currency ISO code, if it's USD, put a $sign. If it's EUR, put this. You know what I mean? And basically have just like an if statement or a case statement to convert the ISO code into that symbol. But beyond that, I don't think there's like functions that are available within Salesforce, like the formulas that'll actually do that for you. I think you'd have to manually build that out.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. But at least to my knowledge, I think that the two main things you're using in flows are going to be that currency rate function that'll allow you to do the conversions to the default org currency. And then anytime you turn on multi-currency in Salesforce, basically any object that you have a currency field on, it just magically gets a currency ISO code field. And that represents whatever that current record, whatever that record is, what currency is set for that record. And then you can get that ISO code. So.
All right. Thank you.
No worries. All right. So I'll tell you what, before we open it back up to questions, Jade, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I do want to do kind of a quick shout out for your session on Monday. Can you give us like the abstract or a quick commercial plug for your session on Monday?
Sure, Bill. No. You're not putting me on the spot. You just called on me. That's fine. So I had a session. The last session I had was around building apps. But I didn't like build anything in front of anyone or demo it. And someone had said, "Hey, Jade, why don't you build?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I got to work now." So Monday's session is where I'm going to build an app live. I'm sure everyone does it different, and you can definitely go down a rabbit hole, building apps, right? Like some people want to diagram the whole end-to-end process first. Some people want to document and gather business requirements. I'm just going to build. And I had asked, well, what do you want me to build? And I guess we settled on bakery. So I'm going to build some kind of bakery app, I guess. And it's around dinner time, 5:30 to 6:30. So everyone's going to be super hungry and dreaming about pastries, I'm going to guess. But the good thing is it's calorie free. So that's a good side.
Nice. Very cool. And just again, for a plug for the sessions in general. So basically every week you have kind of a different topic or a different focus.
Yes. Yes. So the first one was like an elevator pitch. One of the ones that I'm going to do, I'm trying to figure out a date. Jonathan Fox, who you might know from the UK, he wanted to do a session with me. So we're collaborating on all the acronyms and terms in Salesforce. So many. So we're doing that sometime in August. Just lots of different things like page layouts, all the dynamic actions and buttons, and like the list goes on, as you guys know.
Yeah.
So that's that.
No, that's awesome. Well, that just to be clear, so that's Mondays at 5:30 Eastern, right?
Yes, 5:30 Eastern.
Awesome. So if anybody hasn't joined those sessions yet, definitely make sure that gets added to your calendar. All right, cool. Well, let's open it back up. Any other questions or anything that anyone would like to walk through? Seems to be a short week. Nobody had any issues this week. It's nice to see. Frank, yes, a link for Jade's session. If you sign up on our main sign up page, which is, and I'll put it in the chat here, mtofficehours.com. Thank you. You beat me to it, Carrie. That will actually, when you sign up there, you'll actually get an email with all the links for the 3 different sessions that we have. So this session for open Q&A, Jade's Monday session, which is topic specific, and then David's Wednesday session for career and branding and his speaker session that he has. So all of them will be available there. And also if you go to and I'll paste a link here, but we have our LinkedIn group and page that has links to the sessions as well. So I'll paste that into the chat. And while I'll do that, I'll ask again, any questions or anything that anyone would like to walk through?
I just have a comment, Bill. Sorry.
Sure.
So the reason why I wanted to do a Monday session was to fill in the gap. Because Bill, as you know, is very, very technical. He can answers all the questions that I can't even touch. And Wednesdays with David Nava is, career branding, and they bring on different people. So if anyone has any other questions as a newbie, that is a forum on Mondays to try to help out.
Yeah.
And it's not recorded.
These calls are recorded for quality assurance and training purposes. So, well, cool. No, it's awesome. More sessions, the better. The more places people have to get questions answered, the better. So, yeah, I see a hand. Carrie.
Hi, Bill. This is my first time attending one of the Friday sessions, so thank you. This is very much a newbie question, and I'm sure this has come up at some point or another, but I'm just curious on some of your naming conventions or, again, like best practices in your description boxes, that kind of world.
Yeah. So I think when we talk about naming conventions, I guess that can mean a lot of different things. Like if you're creating fields or if you're creating a whole bunch of formulas and variables in a flow, creating object names. I mean, everywhere that you work in Salesforce, you're gonna have to name something and have a convention for it. There's actually a recording, and after I'm done walking and chewing gum here, I'll paste a link here. But we did a meeting with. Now I'm gonna forget the name. Anyway, I'll paste a recording. But basically, she did a session. Monica did a session on naming conventions for flows and how to basically keep track of what each flow is doing based on the name and everything else. So I'll share that. But I think what it really comes down to is consistency. So coming up with a standard and then just trying to be consistent and stick with the standard. When it comes to the descriptions, I am notorious that in my own org that I don't put descriptions. I'll just create the field and then move on with my day. But I think that's really the wrong thing to do. right? So I think that the general rule is that whatever you put in that description box, it should be clear enough that if you had to hand over your org to another admin, 2 years from now, that they should be able to look at that description and know exactly what that thing is for a field you created again several years ago. When it comes to, say you build your skills, you're getting a little bit more advanced, and then you start writing code, Apex and Lightning Web Components and things like that. The same thing applies there. So, making sure that you have those descriptions in the comments so that if it's not you looking at it, it's somebody else that has no background as to what it was for or what the purpose is, that they can go back and they can understand generally what it's supposed to do and how it works and, that kind of thing. So, and I would say one other thing, when I say like somebody else is looking at it in 6 months, a lot of times I'll write code even for our own application. And then, you get pulled in another direction for a few weeks or a few months. And then you go back and look at it and you kind of say like, how was I doing? I have no idea what even I was doing here. So writing those comments, those descriptions, it definitely helps out, especially when you're either working in a team or there's just large gaps between the time you're looking at something, building it, and then having to troubleshoot it later. So that said, let me pause. Any other thoughts or points anybody would like to make on that as far as naming conventions and descriptions and whatnot? And while I pause, I'll look for that recording.
I've always found that like when I'm creating a field or creating a flow, you don't have to be so robust in your description, but just something so that way, even as you as the admin, you create a field and then you come back and you're like, why did I create that field? If the description box is there, I usually put like, this is the function of the field. This is to do this, or this flow is to, this flow is for, I usually write out, this flow is for da, 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 or something like that. Just so when I'm looking at it, I don't have to run through the flow, because even if I built it, I might forget it. So I do find it incredibly helpful, not only for handoff to other admins, but for me as the admin, because heck, I forget what I build sometimes too.
A good example of that was a few weeks ago, I was creating a report and I needed this date field, and there was created date and created date 2. And I didn't know which one I needed. And I tried pulling them both and I couldn't distinguish, and there was no description. And it wasn't until I got a second set of eyes on it who just noticed that when we pulled it, one was date time and one was date. But if someone had just put that in the description, I wouldn't have spent 45 minutes trying to figure out which field I needed.
Always put, we do JIRA tickets for the stories, and I always put the story number and then a real brief description so I don't have to rewrite everything. And so if somebody wants details as to who requested it or the long description, they can go look up the JIRA ticket.
That's a good one. Maybe slightly unrelated, but just generally for naming conventions within a team. One of the other things we did was we identified numbers for each department within our group. So we have just for argument's sake, say 1 is like general, 2 is sales, 3 is marketing, 4 is support, 5 is services, 6 is development, whatever it is. And basically we use those numbers everywhere that we're saving things related to those departments. So in Salesforce, we have folders with those numbers and broken out in that setup. In Slack, we name our channels that way. In Trello, any board that is related to services has that 5 prefix. So basically, coming up with a naming convention, not for like a field or for like a flow, but just in general, how you organize your reports and Slack channels and everything else. That's really useful or handy, I've found. And to that point about the stories, when we have a feature record or a defect record or a case or an opportunity that we're working on, we have those unique identifiers. I think the way we did it was basically like, if it's an opportunity, it's we created a formula field, which is like op dash the created year dash and then some auto number. And then anywhere that we create anything related to that opportunity, like a folder, Trello board, whatever, we'll prefix that board with that opportunity number. So it's just really nice that, if you're looking at something that you're unsure what it's related to, just by that one ID, you can kind of find all the related pieces of that. So yeah, again, not Salesforce metadata related, but naming conventions in general. Again, come up with a standard, try to stick with it, and that's usually the hard part, is sticking with it. But yeah, I hope that answers your question as far as naming and descriptions.
It does. Thank you.
Yeah, and I also pasted the recording for Not Is Monica, Salesforce famous. She's an MVP, and she gave a talk on flow naming conventions and some other things, which was really great. So if you have a chance, you can take a look at that recording. All right, cool. Any other questions or anything anyone else would like to walk through?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I was wondering if anybody found any resources online about learning more about Net Zero Cloud besides the trail mix, because I did that and it really piqued my interest and I wanted to dig into it a little bit more, and I'm having trouble finding anything else. I know it's new, but if anybody found anything else online where I could start looking into it more.
I am not familiar. Anybody else familiar with that?
If you have access to the partners community, I think there's some stuff there if you work for a company that is a member of that.
Unfortunately, I do not.
Yeah, I think it's very new, so I don't think there's a lot of materials out there for it quite yet. Let me just make that note though. So that was for, which one was it? What cloud?
The Net Zero Cloud?
Net Zero. I was thinking, is that the same as Sustainability Cloud?
I don't think so.
Okay. They got way too many clouds these days.
Great. It might be worth asking Stephanie Murphy too, if she has some more materials with that.
Okay, thank you.
Stephanie Murphy, as in Hiring Our Heroes? Stephanie Murphy?
Yeah, they're really pushing the Net Zero Cloud for this next cohort. So
cool.
She might have access to some more stuff.
This has not been made officially public yet, but I will actually be trying to hire somebody through Hiring Our Heroes for the next cohort. So,
thank you, Bill.
What's that, Kyle?
I said thank you.
Yeah, we've had a lot of great success with Hiring Our Heroes. So we have an open position, and that's where we're gonna start.
Love it.
And I'll also share with this group too, if once we have the job description, if anybody's interested.
Also, if as a Hiring Our Heroes alumni, if anybody has any questions about that or anybody needs to, please schedule some time with me on Veterati. The page seems to be down, so I can't post my profile link, but I think if you go to Veterati and you just search for me, yeah, you should be able to schedule with me as well. So I'd love
I got
to.
an email yesterday, Veterati is down.
Yeah, did they say for how long?
No, because I don't even think they knew specifically what the issue is and how to solve it, but they said basically they broke something in their own org, I think is what they did.
Cool.
Hey, Bill.
Yes.
If partners, Salesforce partners, have their own Hiring Our Heroes program, is there somewhere on your program or on the Salesforce program that we can broadcast that?
Yeah, I think specifically for like the veteran community, I know there's like a job postings type thing within the veterans.salesforce.com. And of course, any kind of job openings or information about how folks can get work and get, employment through our page on LinkedIn or even through our group on LinkedIn. Any of those are okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And Kathleen, I saw your notes here. I wrote down your name and I have your thing saved in the chat here. So I got you.
Shameless.
Oh, Bill, there was a question in the chat that I think got lost.
Yeah.
But I'm just reposting it so you can read it. It was from Eudora.
Oh, creating a process builder to flow, running into the issue of the subflow that is being referenced in the flow has a paused element. So the main flow is not saving because this does not accommodate a paused element in the record triggered flow. Has anyone experienced this? If so, what was your solution? Okay, because I guess on a record triggered flow, there's no real concept of a pause within that. Pause would only be for the screen flow, if that or a auto triggered flow, I guess would be the issue.
So yeah, well, so I'm bringing the subflow into a master flow, for lack of a better term, and the because the subflow has a paused element and the master flow is a record triggered flow,
Yeah.
the paused element, well, the record triggered flow does not accommodate the paused element. So I've been researching and it's saying that to do a scheduled path, and even if I do that, it does not let me save the flow. And that's the thing, it won't even let me save the flow for me to actually go in and do anything with it.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me just take a look here. Just very quickly, for me and for anybody else who might not be 100% familiar, what would be the use case for where you would want to have that pause element within a flow?
That's a good question. I was actually moving it from a process builder to a flow, trying to stay ahead of the game, but here, let's see. Let me see where it's pulling it.
Yeah, I guess I'd want to understand what the pause is there for, and then maybe here, let's see. So pause, add a pause configuration for each. Yeah, go.
Right. So it's an auto launch flow, but then it starts with the pause for prior record changes. So again, going back to documentation, and that's all I see on there.
Yeah.
Because someone else created the flow.
I have run into that as well. I have not found a solution for it. But Bill, what I was trying to do was to use a record trigger flow followed by a subflow as a workaround to the native limitation of 2 roll-up summaries per object when there's master detail, like a junction object.
Yeah.
And so what I was trying to do was do the normal updates to the junction object and then give myself a short window pause in a subflow to allow the DML operations to proceed before I mimicked the roll-up on the children of the junction object. And there's no way to do it.
Yeah.
Not that I've found.
Now, I hate saying something like this with just like a minute left because I do have a hard stop. I have a customer call at 1, but let me just throw this out there, right? Imagine a world where you have a record triggered flow that is doing something, and then that piece where you need to wait until something happens to do something else. I mean, in theory, could that be like its own record triggered flow, or could that be like a platform event that gets fired and then once it picks up in the platform event and does something else? I just wonder if like a pause would be necessary versus just triggering off of that other thing completing. But again, that's like a very open-ended statement.
I mean, there's also the fact that you can add that time element to flows now as well, because I've got one where it's like, go through this set of stuff and then a day later go through this set of stuff.
Yeah. And I think how granular can that get? Is it like a day, or can you get down to like hour and minutes as well?
Minute. You can get down to minutes.
Yeah. So yeah, something to consider. Maybe we can pick up with that next time. But like I said, unfortunately I do have a hard stop today. So let me just say this. I want to thank everybody for joining. If there was anything that we didn't get to, or anybody has any other kind of questions, the best place for engagement, at least for this group, is going to be on LinkedIn through either our group page or through our the group itself. Like we have a page and a group on LinkedIn. So, and if none of those work, the next best thing would be to message me directly on LinkedIn or send me an email at wkuehler@resourceheroapp.com. Always happy to help. So hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll catch up next week.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thanks, everyone.